This episode is for all the Barbaras, the Vickies, the Steves, and the Michaels out there who want to start their own podcast. I met a colleague today and she told me about her idea of starting her own podcast. And she asked some questions, how did you do that, and this and that. And I had the idea for this episode in my mind for, I would say, a couple of weeks. And this was my final reminder to record an episode like that. So today is a less wine-related, but more podcast-related episode on how to start your own podcast, what you should have an eye on, and what is not super important, especially in the beginning. Have fun with this very, very special episode. Welcome to the Pinot and Pixel podcast episode number 169. And this is an episode about my journey and my tips that I have collected for you over the last 2 years and 169 episodes on this podcast and 14 episodes on another podcast I've recently started talking about alcohol-free products. Before we start, I would like to say maybe 2 or 3 things in general. For me personally, it's a very important topic because many people struggling in just starting their own podcast, their own social media account, whatever, because there are so many obstacles in their ways, and sometimes most of them are excuses. So talking about technique, talking about professionality, talking about audio and video quality, this is important. Don't get me wrong, but just to start, usually it's just excuses. So if you have something in your mind, you're passionate about a topic, just hit record, start it, cut it, and put it online. And then you will see what will happen. Of course, I struggle with this as well. And I was in the fortunate position that I had a very good friend, Lucas, who started this podcast with me, having the idea of Pinot, so the wine guy, and Pixel, more the relation to IT, technology and stuff. And in the end, it turned out to be a super good idea to just mix those 2 topics in together. And basically, this is my niche as well. But we will talk about niches in a second. First of all, I want to share how my podcast has been going so far. I'm very transparent in that, and I don't want to lie because nobody profits of lies. So I will just be transparent with that. When I started my podcast, that time with Lucas 2 years ago in November 2022, we had the idea just to start it, and we just did it. We recorded it. We had very bad audio and video quality, but we wanted to share our story, our learnings with the world. So we kept on going, and I recorded 149 episodes, half of it with Lucas, and in the end, then it turned out that his resource is quite barely available, quite rare, because he started his own startup and this took 150% of his time. So unfortunately, we stopped working together. We're still very good friends. We have a chat every now and then. He's focused on his startup. I'm focused on my stuff, and I'm super into my podcast. And it turned out to be the topic, the hobby, even the task I'm most passionate about and I'm most consistent with. It's super crazy. The thing that I'm most disciplined about in my life is my podcast, and it gives me so much structure. It really gives me a backbone for everyday life. So I'm super proud of myself as well that I started and I kept doing it. And after 149 episodes, I took the decision to switch to English. Why that? It was in March. I was at ProWine. I took part in some other fairs and some other exhibitions. And many people said, "Who's this guy? What is your podcast about? Oh, that sounds interesting. But it's German? Oh, sorry. I'm not able to listen to that because it's German." And I mean, it's a wine podcast talking about the current topics in the wine industry. It's a niche in the niche, which is basically good. But if you want to have a broader audience, it might be a good idea to switch to English. And just today, a colleague and a client asked me, "How has it been going since you switched from German to English?" And the truth is, with the first switch, with episode 150, everything was still okay. And at episode 151, I realized I lost 40% of my listeners because I had direct contact with some of them, and they said, I mean, it's a great podcast. Still, the content is great, but I really struggle with understanding English. My English is not super good. I manage to just talk to people, but I'm not able to listen to this podcast just doing other stuff or just running or driving by car, because I have to concentrate not only on the topics, on the content, but also on the language. So this is one of those quite difficult decisions you have to take, especially when you start in your mother's language and then switch to a foreign one, or at least in the internationally accepted language, English. And for me personally, it was a positive surprise that I don't struggle with talking in English. I know that my English is not perfect, but I don't care. I mean, I cut my podcast on my own, so I realized, oh, what was that? Grammar, or I don't know, sentences or words I totally fuck up, but I don't care. I mean, people still understand what I'm talking about, and this is the most important thing. So right now we are at episode 169, and I realized that I've reached not only the level I had before I switched to English, but even 40% plus right now. And one of the main reasons were that I didn't keep talking on my own or just presenting the current issues. I also invited interesting people from the wine industry. And it's not only super cool for you guys, because you don't have to listen just to me. There's also other people bringing in content, bringing in ideas, giving another perspective on things, having discussions. It's also their community, it's their reach, their visibility. And this is very, very important as well. And when we talk about growth of podcasts, this is one of the main factors. So saying, I don't know, I invite famous people, I invite people with a big followership on Instagram or so. This is important to grow your podcast. You have to be visible. So right now, I'm super satisfied how it is going. There's things I really do well, in my opinion, and there is some things I still struggle with, and we will talk about that in a second. It's concerned about monetization. And if we talk about the key milestones in my podcast recordings, basically we talk about episodes where people were invited to have a chat about wine, about their products, about their personal stories. And the first that really made the community grow was the episode with Luca Dams. Luca Dams is the CEO of Senso, of the non-alcoholic brand. It was episode number 87. And I still can remember when I opened the podcast and said, "Welcome to Pinot and Pixel podcast episode number 87. And Luca was like, "Ooh, nice, 87 episodes. I didn't know that." And it gave me this confirmation that I'm on the right way. And then the next milestone for me was episode 100. And episode 100, of course, was also very important for me, because I have never expected that I will reach 100 episodes in less than 1 year. And this, of course, was very exciting for me, and also showed me that I'm consistent and I have the discipline to do this. And it's still so much fun, even though it takes a lot of time to prepare, to record, to cut, and to publish it. But it's still so much fun, and this is the most important thing. And the next milestones were when I invited people, Tommy Grimshaw, Mary Bridges, Sarah Massey, Guillaume Laguerre, so the people in this case from the English wine industry that have a huge following and that also are interested in sharing their stories, not only talking about products or the 27th interview on, okay, tell me your background and what is your story, and then just talking about the, I don't know, winemaking approach. Of course, this is always a part of those interviews, but it's more about the people. And what I also realized is that preparation for those episodes is key. And it's so much fun to do research on the podcast guests you have that you even forget the time. And I can remember when I prepared my interview for Tommy, I guess it took me 10 or 12 hours, because I also talked to friends, to colleagues. I had a chat with his wife just to get some personal information, always, of course, respecting their privacy, but still saying, I don't know, what was your best experience? What would you like to ask me at the beginning or at the end of the episode? I really love this, and it showed out that those were the most successful episodes, because in the end it was not only a great episode talking about the content, it was also great because they shared it in their network, and the podcast kept growing. And right now I'm more satisfied than ever before. So what I would say is there were milestones, and of course you need those milestones to see that not only it's you having fun while recording and preparing, it's also seeing the success, that this is important for other people and it excites other people. And this was my main goal. I want to take you on a journey for probably 5 to 10 minutes. Why I started this podcast, what was my personal, my personal goal, my personal why for this podcast. And then we will talk about the initial challenges and how I overcame them at that point, still with Lucas. And I had a chat with Lucas, I would say every 4 weeks, just to have some feedback on the podcast, how it was going. He's still asking, how's your podcast going? I really appreciate that, Lucas. You're still so interested in that. And maybe one day you will come back and rejoin the pod. I was studying WSET 3 and then the diploma. Started in 2018, and I was studying international wine marketing, a master's degree in parallel. And it was super fun for me to receive all this knowledge, to learn so many new things. The problem was it was usually the things that the books were talking about. And I really struggled with what is actually going on in the industry. What are the current topics? What are the trends? Because when you have a book that has been released 3 years ago, there can be trends, but basically it focuses on the current state of the industries, of the countries, of the regions. So I started reading newsletters. There were many recommendations from my professor at that time, from Markus Wieschoff. And of course I followed them, but it was a mess. It was 40 newsletters reading every week, looking at newspapers, in the newspapers, reading online blogs, having Google alerts activated, and it was so much work. And having 2 studies in parallel while working for my company, and at that time I still had a job at a company as an employee, it was just too much. So my idea was, after I finished that successfully, to start a podcast talking about the current topics in the industry, just to give you guys, if you are interested in wine, if you want to work in the industry, or if you just love wine as a product, or gastronomy, hotellerie, restaurants, if you are concerned about those, not only businesses, you can listen to that as a private customer, as a private person, if you're just interested in this area. I started this podcast. So what I basically do is I still read. It's between 40 and 60 newsletters a week. I have 3 Google alerts running every single night. So I would say 15 to 20 newspapers, usually New York Times, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes magazine. So the big ones that also talk about wine-related topics. And in addition, I grew a network of people, of listeners of this podcast. So thank you very much as well, who also send me things. I say, wouldn't this be interesting for the podcast? And also, I always mention that because I really appreciate this sharing of stories, of news, of things you maybe just want to listen to. In addition, of course, I always ask for feedback. So basically, this is what made my podcast the way I'm super satisfied with. And this was also the reason why I started this podcast. And it turned out to be a very, very good idea, because I stayed at the University of Applied Science right now as a lecturer. And of course, I can use all the things I learn, I read every week for my lectures, also for tastings, for seminars with clients, with private customers, because it's actual. It's currently happening. It's brand new stuff, and people are interested in that. If you tell the story 150th time that, I don't know, Dom Perignon invented a traditional method in Champagne, even though they know he didn't invent it, why? Of course, this is also knowledge, but just to put stuff on and saying, no, it was the British guys that invented it. It was Christopher Merritt, who was working in the wine industry 6 years before Dom Perignon became winemaker, and he was focusing on traditional methods. So basically it was founded in England, and then talking about the current development in the English wine industry, and that England is a region to have an eye on. This is what excites me, and this is what also people tell me is what they are excited about, because it's brand new, and they don't have to read the newsletters and the email newsletters and newspapers and all this kind of stuff. So this was my personal motivation, and it turned out to be easier for me to just record a podcast. What I had to learn was talking to the camera, like I'm doing it right now, like talking to a person. This was tough in the beginning because I didn't grow up in an environment where everybody's used to talk to a camera, talk to his or her phone. And also, second thing, it's not super easy for everyone to listen to your own voice. Because can you remember the first time you heard your own voice? It was like, oh wow, that sounds awkward, because it sounds differently, but you get used to it. After, I don't know, 20, 30 times listening to your own videos, rewatching them for 5, 6, 7 times, you get used to it. So don't struggle with that. That will pass. Of course, when you start a podcast, there are some initial challenges. And when you struggle in starting your podcast in general, some challenges might be very difficult to overcome. And I was lucky enough, and Lucas as well, that we just wanted to start a podcast. We didn't struggle with starting it, but of course we had some challenges. Technical issues, resources, of course, and preparation. And those were the 3 things what we struggled the most with in the beginning. Talking about preparation, when you listen to one of the first 30 episodes, you can really spot if someone was prepared or not. And even though I have cut out all those ahs and hms, and don't get me wrong, you don't have to cut all this stuff out. But if you ask a simple question like, how was your day going? And you can't say, it was a good day, I had a nice tasting, but it was like, yeah, it was what did I do today? I had a tasting and I think, I think it was good. I mean, this is human, but if you're focused on an audio experience, this might be tough in the beginning. But if you are prepared, you know the questions that will be asked, you know the topics, and you have read some articles about the topics you will talk to, and both have to do that, then it's easier to cut and it's easier to listen to. The second thing were the resources. Preparing an episode, do some research for that, recording it, cutting it, upcycling it for social media and so on and publishing it takes a huge amount of time. Just to give you a feeling, I record 2 podcast episodes a week, and usually it's between 20 and 30 hours per week. So when we think about a podcast that is recorded once a week, we talk about 10 to 15 hours that you have to dedicate on the episodes. I mean, if you can afford a person that cuts your episodes, this could be an option. The thing is, especially when you're in the niche of a niche like I am, it's quite tough to find a cutter, because sometimes it turns out that I just talk about stuff that is not correct, that was totally wrong because I just mixed up words, especially in English. And if the person is not related to wine, she or he doesn't realize that this was not right and don't cut it out and it stays in. And I mean, still, this could also be something where you say, okay, I mean, like a newspaper, if I publish something incorrectly, I can say in the next episode, sorry, correction. But if people just listen to this episode, it might be a good idea. And if you have the possibility to cut it out, why not doing it? So if you have the money to pay somebody who will cut your episodes, good option. But in the beginning, I also learned so much while cutting my episodes on my own, because you also learn how you speak, where you make pauses, how many M's you use, what really is important on focusing on a topic while storytelling. And this is a learning effect I don't want to miss, because this brought me to where I am now. And right now it takes much less time to cut an episode. To give you another feeling for that, today, when I have an episode that is about 45 minutes, it takes me about twice the time to cut it. So maybe 90 minutes. When we started with a 1-hour episode, it took me 4 hours to cut it. And this is huge, guys. If you imagine if you do this twice a week, if you have to work 40 hours a week and you add up 30 hours for a podcast, this is tough. But this is the learning effect, that you need. And in the end, patience is key. And the third thing, of course, is technical obstacles. And I don't talk about choosing the right microphone, but things like you have cut your episode, you invested 4 hours, and then just your computer explodes, or I don't know, the upload doesn't work, or your internet breaks down. This is probably 5% of the time things you struggle with, but still, again, be patient. This too shall pass, and in the end, everything will turn out in a good way. Basically, those were the big obstacles in the beginning. And right now, of course, I want to talk about growth. about development of a podcast, not only the personal development, because this happens in parallel, which is good, basically. And of course, also about monetization. And the things I really struggled with, or let's put it in a different way. I guess I'm quite able to spot the things I'm quite good at and focus on those things. And I also have the ability, I love reading about stuff I'm interested in. And I always sometimes call myself a hoover for knowledge, because I just want to suck everything in if I'm interested in a topic. And this is something that some other people might struggle with. But this is something where I would say I'm quite good at. So I know what I can do, but what I really struggle with is this, especially today, it's a big thing when just have a look on LinkedIn, this talking about the things you can do really well without annoying other people. When you just have a look in your LinkedIn bubble, if you're on LinkedIn, the people on LinkedIn usually are experts for everything. And it's even worse. I don't know, there is a trend that's, for example, take 2021, blockchain was a huge thing, talking about the tech bubble. Everybody was a blockchain expert. And after, the blockchain, the crypto industry just got hit by several issues, macroeconomic factors as well. Everybody turned out to be an AI expert. And for me, I would never consider myself being an expert, because the more you learn, the more you realize how less you know, how few things you really know. And this was such a big thing for me, realizing that, and I would never ever call myself an expert in something. There's several things I'm good at, but there is also always a person on the planet that might be better. But I don't care. I mean, with the things I know and the things I can do today, I can help 10 or 20 people. And this is more important for me. And this is why I also struggle with telling people that I have a podcast and I'm quite good in this and that. And I also struggled in putting this out. I mean, it worked quite well through my network. I'm a good networker, and this paid out with clients, with customers, with followers of this podcast. People talk about this, and if they're interested in that, they, of course, tell this to other people. They talk to other people about this, and many recommendations for this podcast came through you, my dear listeners. So thank you very much for this as well. This supported the fact that I'm not the super outgoing guy and annoying people with I'm the expert for wine trends in the industry. But right now, I found a way to manage something in between, to talk about this in a more humble way, in a more down-to-earth way, and it's still in progress, but this turned out to be a good strategy for myself. And maybe you already have a big following and you start a podcast, and then this might be easier for you because there's more people listening in the beginning, there's more people interested in the things you do. And I mean, I started with 0 followers on LinkedIn, 0 on YouTube, and 300 on Instagram. I'm a guy that doesn't care about followers, but it's more because it's more about community and engagement. We will talk about that in a second as well. But it is definitely an opportunity for you if you have a big following and you want to start a podcast. So what are your main things you have to keep an eye on when you want to start your own podcast? The first important thing, as usually in life and with every topic, planning is key. And I still have in my mind, before I started my podcast, there was this guy, Pat Flynn. He's one of the greatest podcasters on the planet and also a great educator. I highly recommend it. I put the link in the show notes. And I still have this quote in my mind when he said, "The riches are in the niches." And don't get me wrong, he doesn't talk about how to become rich with your podcast, because there is hundred thousands of idiots that have their 2 million podcast strategy, and you should definitely listen to this kind of stuff, but always keep in mind there is hundred thousands of podcasts on the planet, and only 0 point something percent are really successful where they make enough money to live from that. The others just do it for fun, or just to grow their reach, their visibility, or to just gain new customers. And monetizing this is more difficult than just living from, the podcast you promote or so. But both is possible. But starting a podcast with the main idea to get rich, to earn money with that, is, I would say, more difficult, and it also puts more pressure on you, because every week you're checking numbers. It's the same with Instagram. You're checking numbers. This doesn't work. I don't want anymore. And maybe one day you just quit because you think you're not growing. So consistency and patience again is key over here. If you want to start a podcast and there's something you're really passionate about, you have fun with, and you want to talk about as well, you have stories to share, choose your niche. And it could be a niche in the niche, like my podcast is, because you don't have to have a huge following with hundreds, thousands of people. Sometimes a couple of hundreds are enough because you help those couple of hundred people and you have a way bigger percentage of audience interaction. You get to know many, many people in person because they reach out to you over Instagram. And some of my listeners who really reached out to me for the first time through my podcast became friends. And this is also very important for me because I not only want to help people, I also want to meet people that have my mindset and that are those kind of people who I want to share a glass with at night, just to have a chat about this and that. And it doesn't have to be wine always. It could also be technology or, I don't know, football, whatever. After you have chosen your niche, the audience is the next thing. So what will be your peer group, your target group? And maybe this is a thing that some people might struggle with. Well, if you have your niche, usually the audience might be already defined through the niche. And in my case, it's basically B2B, so people working in the wine industry or at least interested in that. We don't talk about age, seriously. I mean, in some ways, you still can talk about age, but if I just have a look on the people who are listening to my podcast, on my provider, I have Anchor, recently bought by Spotify, I can see there's people between 80 and 65 listening to my podcast. So age is not a thing. The same with gender. Who cares? I mean, if you want to do segmentation in marketing, maybe it might be an option to have a deep dive in your audience, but just for the beginning, knowing your audience is totally fine because maybe it depends on who you talk to, how you talk, and what topics you talk about. And the third thing, and this is also very important, and maybe I had an advantage in that case because I came from education and project management, setting goals for your podcast, milestones, and also expectations is very important. And again, it's not about money. It's not about 150 followers over the next this and that. This is one part of it, but this is not the main goal. It's more about recording 2 episodes a week, having the structure like I have. Every Wednesday, it's a specific topic like this one, and every Saturday, it's the weekly update on the wine industry. And I mean, this could be a blueprint for you as well. If you want to record an episode once a week or so, 1 week, personal storytelling, and every second week or every fortnight you have a guest that is talking about his or her story. This could be like a kind of a structure, and then you set goals, 50 episodes every single week, one for the next year, and expectations. Of course, growth is important, visibility is important. Maybe you want to find new clients over your podcast. You just want get more visibility, or maybe you just want to learn or to dive deeper into 2 or 3 topics. If I would be in 2018 again, I would start my podcast because I would talk about all the wine regions I have to learn anyway for WACT, for international wine marketing. And while talking about it, it's really manifested in my brain. So I learn it twice or even 3 times because I hear it several times. And in addition, I might help some other people struggling with the same issues at the moment because they, don't like preparing for the fortified exam at WACT or the wine country of Hungary to prepare for the international wine marketing, stuff like that. So if you are on your way, it might also be an idea to include this in your goals, in your expectations, and in the planning of your episodes. Second point, talking about the technical setup. To start a podcast, you don't need the newest of the newest. The only thing you need is a PC with a front camera or, even a mobile phone in horizontal resolution. Hit record, start your podcast. Because in the beginning, it's more about getting this feeling how to act in front of the camera, how to prepare for topics. And I mean, if you have the budget, if you have the resources, if you have the time, you can do your own research on technique, on software and all this kind of stuff. But I can tell you, you can start a podcast with 0 money. Really. every tool you need in the beginning is for free. You don't usually, when you have a laptop or at least a mobile phone, you have everything you need to start a podcast. And then you get it just happens by accident. You get into this process of exchanging your microphones. If you have been following this podcast for at least 100 episodes, you will recognize that there is a huge difference in video quality, in audio quality. This is my 4th microphone, guys. And it won't be the last. But at the moment, I'm super satisfied with that. Everything works. I don't have to think about the technology. And this is the most important thing. If you want to record an episode and you're well prepared, you just want to go in your room, in your studio, wherever, and just hit record and start. You don't want to care about camera setting and microphone, wires and stuff. This comes with the time. But if you want to have a recommendation for tech and for software, here is my tools and my software for you. I started with a very cheap but still good microphone from Rode. There's the Rode Podcaster. There's a Podcaster Mini USB. It's a portable microphone. So if you are traveling a lot, it's a really small bag and you have everything you need. This is a USB wire. You just connect it, hit record, and that's it. And if you have an Apple mobile phone and a Mac, the best thing is, I don't know if you know this, but with this, it's called handoff. You can use your camera right now. I'm looking at my iPhone right now as a 4K external camera. And you don't even need a wire for that. Isn't that amazing? This was my game changer in mid-23, I guess, when the update came from Apple and the video quality changed. And if you realize right now, why is he talking about microphone and cameras? Yes, if you have the opportunity, I will always recommend to record video and audio. Because, podcast usually is an audio experience, but just by adding the video to your podcast, there is some things that turned out to be better for me. One, it's easier to cut when you have the video with you because you can have a look at the video and also on the lip movement and stuff like that. Secondly, you can use it for YouTube, upcycling your podcast, sharing the video. Broader reach, you can use the videos for short clips for social media. And in addition, Spotify is able right now to share video. And I see that 30% of my listeners are watching it on Spotify with video. Isn't that cool? It's not easy to record a podcast talking about a topic and being able to talk in pictures so you don't have to watch the episode, but you could. And even if nobody is interested in the videos, and sometimes my videos have, 10 views on YouTube, I don't care because I can clip them and use them for reels and for videos on Instagram, on TikTok, and also on YouTube Shorts. So this upcycling is a super cool thing. So if you want to start with an easy microphone, sorry, I talked too much about other stuff. The Rode Podcaster is, I will put the link in the show notes, it's about 70 euro or so. And what I also do, usually I buy secondhand because I don't have to buy the newest of the newest and not always new because I'm a big fan of upcycling and my first microphone was 50 quid on a platform called Kleinanzeigen in Germany, but basically it's available in every country. Le Bon Coin in France, Willhaben in Austria, and Das Vinted in England. And in every country there's this second-hand platform where you can buy used stuff. And for your microphone, super easy. And then this right now is still a Rode, but it's of higher quality. I have this arm because it's easier because the problem with microphones that stand on your shelf, sometimes when you just hit the table or you just move with your hands a lot, you hit the microphone or you can still hear the drums in the microphone and you want to have that. This is why those arms are a good opportunity. Talking about software, what you need is a recording tool. What you need sometimes is an online recording tool if you have guests and it's not recorded in place. And you need a cutting tool. And you know what? There is tools available, hundreds of those tools that are for free. And still, until today, after 2 years of podcasting, almost 200 episodes, my cutting tool and my recording tool, the tool I'm recording with right now, is for free. The recording tool is called OBS. Thousands of settings, but it's super easy to set up in a second and just hit record. And you can enter different video devices, audio devices. This is the nerdy stuff, but just to start with, OBS, if you record on your own, super easy. And then if we talk about an online platform, there are some studios. I started with Riverside, which was basically okay in the beginning, but of course, usually you have to pay for more memory on their clouds for episodes and stuff. And it turned out to be, I have to pay $20 a month. And if I have guests, I don't know, every 4 to 5 weeks, maybe this doesn't turn out to be a good idea. It doesn't pay out in the beginning. But after a couple of weeks or months, when you realize, okay, I have the budget, I have the $20 in a month, and it's super easy for me to just record episodes with people who, I don't know, live in England, in my case, a tool like Riverside might be a good idea. I started with Riverside, but sometimes I had technical issues, and it might have been my fault. The service was super cool of them, the customer service, but in the end, I struggled too often with the recording of episodes. And then the video podcaster of Gary Vaynerchuk, his name is Dustin, he recommended a tool called StreamYard. I will put the link in the show notes, and StreamYard, guys, is for free. Of course, you have a small logo in the right corner, but who cares? I mean, I talk about the tool I'm using, so why not having this little logo over there? If you want to do this very, very professionally, of course, you can pay $20 a month and get rid of this logo and you have higher quality. But just to start an online podcast with a friend where one is sitting in Italy and the other one is sitting in, I don't know, Sweden, StreamYard might be a good idea. I'm not paid by all those companies. This is just free advertising because I'm really passionate about those tools and they really help me with doing what I do. And in the end, the cutting tool is called DaVinci Resolve. And this is an amazing tool. It's a great tool. It's for free, guys. And this is, it's like using rocket science to go to the supermarket by bike because there's thousands of functions integrated, but you only need 10 or 15. But just to start with, it's cool. And then you turn out to be a nerd while cutting. And maybe one day I will find a cutter because I say, okay, I spend this amount of money every single month to get my podcast cutted to gain the time. Because right now I think I learned enough to be able to do that. But this takes time, guys. And it's still my decision to cut it on my own because it also excites me to listen to my podcast a third or a fourth time. And just to mention this right here, right now, it's always a good idea to re-listen to your own podcast. Some people might think that this is crazy, but I publish it tonight. When you listen to that, it's already Wednesday, and you can be sure that I have listened to this episode at the latest at noon on Wednesday, every single week, because I realize again what I have talked about. Maybe I did some references on the next episodes I can use. And also it helps me staying in my content, being closer related to my content. And I highly recommend to listen to your own episodes every single time, even though it's 1.5 or 2 hours. And finally, you need a hosting platform. And again, guys, surprise, it's free. Go to anchor.com. Right now it's called Spotify for Podcasters. It's free. There's space available and you don't have to pay for anything. It's just free. And the good thing about Anchor, or right now Spotify for Podcasters, is it's not only for Spotify. There is something called RSS feed. And once you have uploaded your episode, it already knows where to publish it. And I have a connection to Apple Podcasts, to Outcast, formerly Google Podcasts by Google Podcasts stopped. So to the 5-6 main players people use for podcasts, and it's for free. So I usually set my time 5 a.m. every Wednesday, every Saturday. The episode goes online, and maybe at 5:30 it's online on every single podcast platform. For free, guys. For free. So podcasting, this cannot be an excuse anymore. Everything you want to do in the beginning is for free. The next point I want to talk about is content creation. I've already talked about the positive effects you have when you record your podcasts with video, because you can upcycle it for social media and for YouTube Shorts and stuff like that. And in addition, with the rise of AI, there's some crazy tools available right now. You have to pay for them. I'll give you an example. There's a tool called Opus Clips. This tool costs €25 a month or so. But what this tool does is I upload the episode and it says I transcript the episode. I identify the clips that might be the most interested regarding the topics I am talking about, and then it clips it in small sequences of 30, 60 seconds, and you can just use them and upload them. I mean, you still can work on those things and make them, I don't know, cooler, more beautiful, whatever, but you can use those clips. And this saves you so much time. I would say I spend at least 2 to 3 hours a week just to cutting my small videos for YouTube, for Instagram, the pictures for the postings on Instagram. It's work basically that you can replace with AI tools right now. And I'm currently working on something, shout out to Luca Dams from Senso again, to fully automate the social media postings just with a tool called Make for free as well, where you can just say, this is my process, this is the list of my topics, take this topic, make a picture with it, make some suggestions for the text, and then just upload it. And of course, it's not generated by myself, but seriously, guys, there is 2 different ways of producing content. One is my personal content with my personal opinion, and basically this is the content of this episode. And then cutting it in a way that this is most interesting for people and just heading a subtext and the hashtags that are currently working the best. This can be done by AI. Why should I spend money on that or time? Seriously. But if I want to do something on my own, if I'm a writer, if I'm a copywriter, whatever, of course I can write the text on my own, or I can do the pictures if I'm an artist and I want to have everything super beautiful, super sophisticated. Of course I can do this on my own, but you don't have to in the beginning. It's all about time and money. And then talking about promotion and marketing, as I've already said, this is a thing I really struggled with. And the good thing is I'm right now getting into this thing, and you have to consider one specific fact. If you have a podcast like mine and you want to talk about what is happening in a specific niche, the current trends and topics, and of course also maybe rising products, it's quite tough to stay neutral when you have products out of this niche that are promoted on your podcast. This works, no problem, don't get me wrong. But the thing is, some people might struggle with staying neutral in talking about current trends while promoting one specific product out of this trend. For example, I don't know, if I love 2 alcohol-free products and I promote them, I still have to be able to talk about the whole industry of alcohol-free products and also talking in a respectful way of other products which I might not like or so. So this neutrality is quite important. And if you choose not to be neutral, this is also totally fine. You can do 150 product reviews on every single podcast, and this could also work. But my choice was to be neutral, to stay neutral. And I discovered that it might be a better idea to promote things in your podcast that you usually work with. This could be tools, this could be technique, this could be companies, where you just say, I recently had a tasting with Garibaldi, my biggest client in my case. And again, this is my go-to resource for Italian wines. And this is unpaid advertisement. I'm just convinced about that product. But maybe one day it could be an option to monetize that. Talking about monetization, it's quite interesting. There are some numbers published by OMR. OMR is the marketing agency company in Germany, one of the biggest marketing events in Europe with over 70,000 visitors once a year. And they have published an article, I'll put the link in the show notes as well, where they say usually it makes sense to monetize your podcast with at least 10,000 listeners. And I have less than 1,000. And I'm not thinking about it at the moment, but there might be some things where it could also work, especially with niche products, with smaller products, which are super interesting for my peer group. So check your target group, your listeners, check how many followers you have or how many listeners you have, weekly listeners, and then decide on your own which products or which software tools or whatever you might use, you want to promote, and then it, of course, it also could work. And this is something where I don't have much expertise in, so I will stop talking about this right now. And if somebody of you has a good strategy that I could use, please let me know, podcast@pinotpixel.com. I'm super open for that. And I don't want a 2 million podcast strategy, of course, okay? I've watched that video 25 times, and you know what? Maybe I'm just too stupid for the video, but there might be other things that work better for me. And last but not least, I want to talk about the biggest challenges and how to overcome them. And the most important thing, how to manage, how to deal with customer feedback. And let's start with the problems. You will always have problems while recording, while preparing, technical issues, financial issues. Sometimes you have health issues. And this is the thing I really look back very, very proudly. Even though I struggle with my physical or mental health at some time, I always recorded the podcast. Consistency, discipline, and patience. Seriously, there were episodes. There was this one I recorded in 2022 around Christmas, and I was ill. You know, I could barely speak. Lucas had 60-70% of talking time, and basically this saved me. But if you struggle with your time management, with your health at the moment, record an episode on that. Just talk for 10 minutes, telling the people, guys, I love this podcast. I wanted to share a story with you, but unfortunately, I'm not in the best mood today. So I just give you a quick update on what's going on, 10-15 minutes, because not only you need the consistency, also your listeners. This is a very important thing. And talking about technical issues, they will pass, guys. I mean, the internet will break down. I have been living without internet for the last 10 days. And I still managed to upload my episodes. I opened a hotspot with my mobile phone, and guess what? It takes me 3 hours to upload an episode because a podcast episode with video is 2 to 3 gigabyte. But I have the patience to just sit, relax, do something else, watch, a football game. The European Championship is going on. Might be good. So this could also be a thing in the future, but please, the technical issues are the least important in everything. And sometimes you might lose an episode or so. Record a short one and talk about the loss of the last episode. I had this twice, actually. Lucas and me, we lost 2 episodes, and you re-recorded 1 or 2 talking about how we lost it and what we were talking about. It was funny as hell, at least for us, maybe not for the listeners. And in the end, the most important thing, as usual, is your community. And what I struggled with in the beginning was saying, hit me up at podcast@pinotpixel.com. My Instagram handle is pinotpixel. You can find me on YouTube under pinotpixel. My name is Alexander Gottschalk. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I really struggled with that in the beginning. Right now, I got used to it. And it surprises me how often people hit me up through those channels. And as I said, Isabel, my co-host at the Alcohol Free podcast right now, became a good friend. Lucas hit me up. He was working for Adidas and right now is in the wine industry. He became a friend. I love it. I just love it. And they also love it being recognized, and they appreciate your answers. They just appreciate talking to you. And this is what I really love about people either calling themselves influencers or at least being considered as influencers with the following, 5,000 plus or so, who answer. Who just talk to you because they're just normal people who have 5,000 followers on Instagram, guys. And even if they are really good in producing content, they might suck in, the wine industry, project management. Who cares? You will always be better in something else, but it's not about comparison. It's about talking to each other, having kind of a vibe, and then you will discover that there's so many people around you that have a similar mindset and are interested in the things as well. They want to see you grow. They want to grow maybe with your support, and then we can grow together. And it sounds a bit cheesy, but basically this is the key of human nature, isn't it? We love to be with people that we like, that we want to spend time with, because we are only on this planet for, 80 to maybe 100 years right now, but we want to have fun. We want to enjoy ourselves. We want to enjoy company, and it's all about the people you share your moments with, you spend your time with. And this is why it's so important to answer every single question from your community. I know, if you have a following of 10,000 plus, it might be difficult, but I know many, many people, especially on Instagram, who have a following with 10K or even 100K, and they still answer. They say hi, and I'm not talking about hitting like, this is okay, this is also for the algorithm, but saying, I really appreciate that, or just freaking the hell out when you send them a funny link or so, or just replying, oh yeah, thank you very much for sharing this, appreciate it. This is important. Seriously. And even though some people say, hit me up at this and that, and I will answer your question, I always took the time and I will always do. If you are interested in English winemaking, I don't know, just hit me up. And Lucas, he was even crazy. He called me. We had a short chat on Instagram about New Zealand. He was heading for a trip to New Zealand, to wineries. He wanted to visit wineries. And he just called me. And then we had a chat for 30 minutes on the phone and realized, nice guy. And right now we're friends. And this is how it turns out in the end. If you love what you do, and especially when people feel that you love what you do, they might also fall in love with the things you do, and maybe with you as well as a friend, or maybe more as well. I don't know. If is podcasting the new Tinder? I don't know. Not interested in that, but it might be a thing. It might be an option for others. So just to recap, guys, 5 takeaways for you at the end of this episode. To quote Pat Flynn again, the riches are in your niches. Find your niche, where you're passionate about, where you love to spend time on, where you really have fun with, that even in dark moments where you struggle with health or with time, you still are interested in recording a podcast. And I would say 5% of my episodes I really recorded because I wanted to and I knew I had to, even though I wasn't in the mood. It's like going to the gym, guys. Second thing, invest in equipment, but not in the beginning. Quality equipment is good because still an audio experience, and this right now is the best quality I've had so far, and I hope you enjoy it. Let me know if it's something else going on. I don't know, maybe you hear this. This is my wine bottles and my shoes. But not in the beginning, but this is a process, guys, and maybe after half a year you realize I need a new microphone, I need a new camera, I need a new cutting tool, or I want to spend money on a cutter. Third thing, plan and structure your episodes. Planning is key, structure is important, research is a very good thing. I still have the opinion that there is too many people in the world on stages, in podcasts. They talk about stuff they think they know, but they don't have to quote it. They don't have to deliver the resources on that. You will always find the resources for the things I talk about over here. Of course, I have my personal opinion, but this is when I always say, to me personally, this and that. But if I talk about facts, I don't know, 20% of the people do this and that, you will find the link down there in the show notes. This is important. Just to prove you have a point over there, and also, again, community, to build trust with the audience, with your community. Fourth thing, of course, it's important to promote your podcast effectively. Not talking about monetization, but telling people that you have a podcast, why you do that, because the why is always the most important thing, and also the visibility. And guess what, guys? The people who are watching this, I have this shirt, Pinot Pixel Podcast, just a simple printing, and I was wearing that as a sweater on a fair. And after talking to 20 people for at least 10 minutes each, some realized, only a few realized, oh, there's a podcast. This is your podcast. What is it about? And then we started a conversation about a podcast, because I'm not a guy who jumps into it and thinks, hi, my name is Alex and I have a podcast. So what I did the second time, thank you, Tommy, again for the recommendation. Look at this. I just turn around. On the back of my shirt is ask me about my podcast. So the next day on the fair, I was wearing that shirt and I had, again, 20 to 30 conversations, but everybody knew that it is my podcast. And this has been a game changer, basically. And this, the conversations I was talking about happened at ProWine, and they were the game changer for me, that people are interested in this internationally, and then I will switch my podcast to English. Here we are right now with an English podcast on the current topics, the interesting trends and topics of the wine industry. And the last thing, guys, stay persistent, stay patient, and adapt. Use your customer feedback. And not only for this podcast, but in general in life, I discovered the moment where I stopped listening to what other people think about me, I became free. This doesn't mean that you should not listen to the people you appreciate and to use their feedback to get better in what you do. But if people say, you're super cool, Alex, or you suck, don't take it serious. But when they say, I don't know, for example, one of my besties, Christian, he said, sometimes when you talk about topics, you run in circles, you know? you repeat yourself 3 to 4 times, and I'm still waiting for the point. And maybe sometimes every now this happens, maybe also in this episode, but I get way better just with this feedback. And of course, it's better to receive feedback from people you love. But in the end, every feedback matters, because if people take the time to send you a feedback, what they like and what they dislike, I should at least appreciate that they took the time and try to find the facts that I'm interested in and that might be good and interesting for me as well. And the patience thing is not only for podcasts, but in general. In today's time, there's so many things happening way faster than 20 years ago. And especially talking about success, visibility, financial success, people always think it happens tomorrow. It takes time, guys. Building a community takes time, 2, 3, 4 years. And this is why you have to be persistent, consistent, and patient. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope this helps if you want to start a podcast. Maybe this brings some light on what I have been doing over the last 2 years and why I do that. I appreciate that you listened to this episode, that you listened to this podcast. And right now, do me one favor, recommend this podcast to a friend or a colleague who might be interested in the topics and who might be able to get better with the content, to learn for studies, for his job, or just for life. Have a great week, guys. See you on Saturday with the weekly update. Ciao, ciao.